Hey, it's me, James. Happy Monday to you all. I am filming this week's Oracle Outlook video reading on Monday morning, April the 14th, 2025. If you are here for the first time, thank you so much for taking the time to check out content on my channel. I do appreciate you stopping by for a visit. If you are a returning viewer and visitor, I'd like to say welcome back and thank you for continuing to circle back and support the work that goes into the channel. So before I get into this week's reading, I want to take a moment to acknowledge a couple of previous readings. So I'm filming this kind of late for me on a Monday morning. I try and film these videos on Sunday night, but I'm finding that some Sundays, because I work two jobs, by the time Sunday evening rolls around, sometimes I am just really kind of wiped out because of my working schedule. So I give myself permission to take the night off and film these videos on early Monday morning. So I got up early this morning, but I had a headache episode that I caught before it became a migraine, and it reminded me of my Kippercast for the month of April because I've been having a lot of headache episodes and periodic migraines since the month began. So it reminded me that in that reading, if you checked it out, you may remember that one of the cards that turned up in that monthly reading is the Sorrow card. And so for me, this is a card when I'm working with my Kipper deck, which is what this card is from. It can represent for me headaches and migraine episodes. So I just realized, I'm like, when I woke up this morning and was treating the headache, that I realized, like, oh, I remember the Sorrow card turned up for the month of April, and I've been having some episodes, and I did say that in that video clip. So that was one thing. And then an interesting thing happened in over the course of last week that made me remember last week's Oracle Outlook video reading, and so I'm going to show you. In my box at one of my jobs at work, I was gifted anonymously now because I don't know who sent this to me or gave it to me, but a large deck of Rider-Waite-Smith tarot cards, and I'm keeping it in the wrapping. This is exactly how it was in my box. And so I was like, oh, I wonder who left this for me. But at that job, it is a fact. It's a well-known fact that I'm a reader, so people do know that. And so every now and again, somebody will ask me, like, oh, would you be interested in this deck? Or, oh, I had this deck and I thought of you, kind of thing. And so, but again, this was anonymous, and it's a huge deck. So there is an old wives' tale or a superstition or a belief that when someone gives you a deck, that is a sign that you should strongly consider becoming a card reader. And so this reminded me of that. And so in light of the gift, it made me think of the card that showed up in last week's reading at the very end. It was the last card in the line of 5. And I used my playing card tarot deck. It was the 2 of clubs. And one of the things I did say in that reading, if you go back and look, is that when it shows up at the end of a line, you could very well be on the receiving end of a gift. And I remembered, like, oh, I did say that. And here I am getting a gift of a tarot deck. And clubs is the suit of work and business, which is where I received said gift. So I just wanted to reflect on those. I think it's important every now and again as readers that we kind of go back and highlight certain issues or certain things that show up in our readings, just to serve as confirmation and validation that when I'm doing these readings, I'm not just doing them for the people who are on the viewing end, but also for myself as the reader. I am part of the collective. So I just thought that that would be interesting to share. And so that gift inspired me to work with my tarot deck. I've been making my own decks since 2020. And I made a tarot deck. I call it the Mitchell Tarot deck. I made it in about, I think, 2021. But this deck that I'm using today is the second iteration in what I'm calling the Mitchell Tarot series. And so this deck is called the Mitchell Tarot, but it's the AI edition. So now, I will say this. I made this deck using AI, and I know that can be a hot button issue for certain people. So if you are feeling that you are not interested in looking at an AI deck, I understand that, and I'm going to honor that. And if you feel like this is the point where you want to click off, I'm just going to say thank you for joining me for as much of this video as you have. And for those of you who are staying, I'm going to continue the story behind this deck. So I made an angel card deck back in, I want to say, 2024. I call it the Angel Insights Oracle, and if you want to see that in this space, just let me know in the comment section below. I actually love it. So it was a collaboration between myself and AI. I just did it on a lark. I was just curious as to seeing what a deck using AI would look like. And so I had to get a subscription to a particular platform in order to complete the deck. And then once the deck was done, I still had time in my subscription. Was for a year, and I still had time in my subscription, and I thought, like, I need to get my money's worth out of my subscription. So I thought, like, well, what if I created a tarot deck using AI? And so that was the inspiration and the impetus for this particular deck. So once again, I'm using the Mitchell Tarot, the AI edition. So I have the deck on hand on the table. So we're going to jump right in and shuffle the cards. And as I do for these weekly general readings, I am asking for the cards to give us any insight, guidance on the upcoming week, how we can make the most out of the week. So in my personal practice, I shuffle the cards about 5 times. And that is one shuffle for each of the elements. That is earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. And I'm thinking one more time. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. Now I'm going to fan the cards out. And now I'm going to be picking 5 cards from the fan that are getting my attention, because I'm going to continue to do the spread that I have been working with in this space, and that is a line of 5. It's 3, 4, I have one more for 5. All right, and those are the 5 cards at the top of the screen. I'm going to take the remainder and put that to one side. Now we're going to line up the cards in the order that they were selected. All right. And so if you're no stranger to my video readings, I usually use a line of 5, and depending on the system, I read it a certain way. So when I'm working with tarot, I'm going to read the cards from left to right, and I'm also going to offer positional meanings for each of the cards. I sometimes do that, depending on, again, on the system. So in this particular case, the first card is going to represent what we call the origin, or what I call the origin in my line of 5. And it can represent a situation that's unfolding, or the reason why we're asking the particular question. If we were asking a more clear and specific question, why we're asking that particular question. So the card here is, this is the King of Air. So this, if you're working with a more traditional deck like the Rider-Waite-Smith that I was gifted, this would be the King of Swords. So I'm going to hold the card up. So here we have a face card or a court card. And so Just like the Queen of Diamonds who appeared in last week's reading in this position, I'm going to read it two ways. So first, the king could be a person, and as a person, this would be somebody who is considered highly intelligent because the suit of air represents the mind. So it could be somebody who is highly intelligent, could be somebody who works in the fields of either law, so this could be a lawyer, a judge, somebody who works in law enforcement, so this could be somebody who is a military person, excuse me, or somebody who works in the police or work with the police. This could also be somebody who's in the military, right? And the king would give him or her higher ranking. And this could also be somebody who works in the field of medicine. So those are some ideas. So we could have something unfolding, right? First card in the line would be something that's unfolding. Something unfolding that could involve somebody who is in law, somebody who is in law enforcement, somebody who is in the medical field, right? So now the other way that I read court cards, and this could be more universal or applicable to most of us watching the video, is that we are being asked to approach things more analytically, intellectually, rationally, using the power. Kings represent power, using the power of our mind and our intellect, yeah? So it's saying approach things in that manner. It could also be, too, that maybe it's showing us that maybe we're a little too much in our heads, right? Being maybe too logical, too analytical in our approach, right? Because one of the things as a personality, this card can represent, being a little bit aloof, being reserved, maybe too much in your head, that kind of thing. This type of person would not be like warm and fuzzy, in terms of emotional. They're more emotionally detached, yeah? So there is that. So it could be either approaching it one way, or we're like either approaching things more with that intellectual tendency in mind, or maybe taking a look and saying, am I being too much in my head, right? Now, some other things that this card comes up for me, I talked about, a judge as a possibility here. So it could be like maybe as a personality trait, taking a look at how we are judging either ourselves or other people, or how we are being judged, right? So this card can be about being judgmental, being critical of ourselves or others, and then also being on the receiving end of judgment and criticism. It could also be about having to defend our beliefs on something. So the way we think, or ideology, or belief system, something of that nature. Like we're coming under some fire or some heat for a particular way of perceiving the world that we live in, yeah? And then the last thing I will say about this, if you're looking, you will note that in the image there is a pair of angel wings behind the head of the king. Going back to the Rider-Waite-Smith deck that I was gifted, if you look at the King of Swords in that deck system, you will note, it took me a long time to discover this, but you will note that he, in his crown, has the image of an angel. There's a face with angel wings next to it. So there's an angel embedded on the crown, or engraved on the crown. So for me, that was a personal nod to angelic work, like angelic communication, yeah? That you, as a person, if you're sensitive to angelic presence, or you work with angelic energies, that you receive impressions, right, from the angels through your crown chakra. And that's why the crown is jeweled the way it is in my particular image, right? So this could just be a nod to pay attention to angelic communications in whatever way that fits for you. For me, I experience what I call crown chakra tingles, and I learned this in my ongoing relationship with Archangel Metatron. I've talked about that in other videos, but if you want me to expound on that in this space, just let me know in the comments and I'll be more than happy to share. But I experience what's called crown chakra tingles, or I feel impressions in the temples of my head. Like I feel like a slight pressing, and it's not detrimental. It's not painful. Actually, I kind of like it, the way it feels. But that's how I know that the angels are impressing something on my mind, right? It's not like I can hear angels speaking to me. It's more like impressions that I get. So you may be sensitive in that regard. So that is another personal interpretation of this card from me. So again, we could have a situation unfolding either involving somebody who is in the legal profession, somebody who is in law enforcement, somebody who works in medicine, or we are being asked to be analytical and rational and logical in our approach to things this week, or this is a heads up to be, and no pun intended on the heads up thing, that we are too much in our heads, yeah? And then the last thing is to pay attention to what the angels are trying to impress upon you if you believe in angels and you work with angels. So that is the King of Air. So then the next position here is about our expectations, right? So what we could expect over the course of the week, or what maybe our expectations are for the week ahead. And so here we have I'm going to hold the card up closer. Here we have the Five of Earth going with the Rider-Waite-Smith system. If you follow that, then this would be the Five of Pentacles. Now, it's very interesting that I talked about beliefs and belief systems with the previous card, because this card, in that tradition, the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition, there are two people outside of a church building, right? So for me, this card could be about a shift or a change in one's belief systems, right? The church would represent a belief system, right? And it could just be a matter that there is a change, which would be the number 5, in belief systems. And also, too, the fact that the 5th card in the major arcana is the Hierophant, and the Hierophant governs all the 5 cards, right? So there is a little bit of a nod with the Hierophant governing this card as well, right? But this card can be about being on the outside looking in. It could be about rejection, isolation, being out in the cold, being frozen out, those kinds of things. It could also be saying too, like on some level, that you are somehow, some way, an outsider or an outcast, or you believe yourself to be an outsider or an outcast, yeah? Now, there could also be some concerns with money. This is a card that has to do with concerns or worries or anxieties about money or finances, right? Now, if you are a person who is self-employed, this is a card that talks about the idea about feast or famine when it comes to self-employment. So you may be going through a downward cycle or a lull in your self-employment business or practice, right? And then the King of Air could be a professional in that regard, right? So whatever product or service that you are offering, then the King of Air might be in connection to that, right? Because I ticked off some industries that could possibly be associated with that, right? And then the King maybe could be like a consultant, like you are offering a consultancy type thing, or you are some kind of advisor, right? Or given that the King is the realm of the mind, King of Air is the realm of the mind, then you might be a person who offers like brainstorming sessions or strategy sessions, right? Something of that nature, where it's more theoretical, right, in approach than hands-on, right, kind of thing. So there is that. So there's some concerns with self-employment, maybe some concerns with money. Earth is also the material, so not just money, but it could also represent the physical body. The cold environment in the image could represent, dealing with colds, minor health challenges, things like that. But in the spiritual sense, it could also be somebody who is either losing faith or re-examining their belief systems if it's of a spiritual nature, that kind of thing. Now, going with the King of Air, and I talked about having to defend one's belief systems. So this could be like you are experiencing either rejection from other people, you're being frozen out, or that this may be telling you that you are freezing other people out, right? It can go both ways. But this is the Five of Earth. Okay, so now the next card would be for me in the middle of the line. This is usually, I read it as the heart of the matter or the central issue or the focus, right? It's kind of a little different than the first card. And here we have, okay, so here we have another challenging card. Here we have the Eight of Air. So now ruling majority, we have two cards from the suit of air. So this would be about looking at the way we are thinking. So this is about our mental activity, our mindset. Air or swords is also the suit that talks about problems, challenges, obstacles, blocks, yeah, that kind of thing. And so the Eight of Air, you can tell by the image that this is a card that talks about interference, right? It could also be talking about things that are keeping us inactive. It's a closer image than the one in the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition where you get to see the full figure. The woman in the card is all tied up, right? And she's surrounded by 8 swords. So this is a more up-close, personal, cropped, if you will, version of that image, right? So again, it could represent, being caught up, wrapped up, tied up in things, right? And it could be things that don't directly involve you, like maybe you are directly or indirectly being tied up, caught up, wrapped up in things that involve other people, right? Now, she's wearing a blindfold in the image, so this could also be about, in a challenging sense, being unwilling to see something, unable to see something. It's like having a blind spot or being in denial. Now remember, air represents the mind, so this would be, either choosing, either consciously or unconsciously choosing not to see something, right? Being in denial about it, right? Now, it could also be a nod to go more with your intuition, your inner sight, yeah, because she's, again, blindfolded, so she's not looking at the external world, right? So she's trusting on her inner sight, right? Now, I talked about the King of Air representing the legal system and law enforcement. This card, just based on the visual, can literally represent incarceration, right? So it could be in the literal sense that, there may be something having to do with people who are incarcerated this week, right? So there may be some information, right? The suit of air or swords is about information, communication, systems, and processes, right? So with that in mind, it may be about information, communication, system, or processes about incarceration. And prior to coming on here to film this video, I was looking at some YouTube videos that have to do with politics and political commentary. And one of the stories that is out making news is about a man who is being held in an El Salvador prison. And the current administration is being tasked with bringing him back to the United States because he was deported without due process. And so remember now, I'm just stating how I heard the story, right? which is a legal matter, right, and a political matter, but it's a matter of getting him back. So there may be more information about that story unfolding this week because, from what I understand, there was supposed to be, according to a judge's ruling, an update made, and I'm filming this on Monday, so sometime today actually. So that may be a story that progresses and unfolds this week as I'm looking at this card in the literal sense. Yeah, okay, so that's literal incarceration, right? Okay. And also, too, this card reminds me of its counterpart, the Eight of Spades in playing cards, because now remember, I'm a playing card reader, right? And so in that system, the way I read the Eight of Spades, it's about injustice, right? So this could be something about injustice, right? As well, because I'm seeing that card in my mind. Okay, so now in the more metaphorical sense, this could be what can we do to move beyond our limitations and restrictions, right? What thoughts are we holding in our minds that are keeping us stuck, right? So the restriction and limitation, is it self-imposed, meaning are we doing it to ourselves, or is it imposed by other people, which would be them putting us in a position where we believe that we're in a rut or stuck, that kind of thing, right? So again, in the literal sense, it could be incarceration. In the more metaphorical sense, this could be about working with limitations and restrictions, whether self-imposed or imposed by others. So that is the Eight of Air. Okay, and so now we're going to move on. This card in this position here would be guidance or advice. Now, I always say belief as a reader. This is my philosophy as a reader, that when cards offer guidance or advice, they are not telling us what we need to do, should do, ought to do, right? They are offering suggestions for our consideration, and then we are empowered to make the decision whether or not we're going to take the advice being suggested, okay? So this card is, here we have the Queen of Air. Interesting. A lot of air cards this week, yeah? So we have the King and the Queen of Air. So now remember, the King rules the more masculine side of thinking, right? And then the Queen will represent the more feminine aspects of mind, right? So this card could be about wisdom gained from experience, because in the image I have the goddess Athena, and then there's the owl next to her, and the owl represents knowledge and wisdom, right? So this could just be if we are being faced with challenges, right? Remember now the ruling majority is the suit of air. If we are being faced with challenges, it may be a matter of, first and foremost, changing the way that we think. It could be a matter of a change in mindset, right? And then it could also be reflecting on the situation in a way that we gain clarity, that we gain wisdom, that we gain some knowledge from this, right? Now, a couple of other traits and aspects. The Queen of Air for me can represent a person who is divorced, widowed, or separated, right? So this could be in some way someone who is gaining their independence, right? Because all of those situations, the end result is that you are on your own in some way, somehow, right? Some shape, form, or fashion, right? So it could be, if I frame that in a positive sense, it could be, gaining or regaining a sense of independence, right? Now, it could also be asking the bigger question: do we need to separate ourselves from either people, conditions, circumstances? Do we need to divorce ourselves from people, situation, circumstances? And would we be willing to do that this week? Yeah? Now remember, King of Air was about emotional detachment. And now we have 3 cards from the suit of air. 2 of them are face cards. So it could be a matter of really taking a look at our mind and our mindset, the way we think about this. It could be thinking logically, analytically, rationally, judiciously even. And I'm going on that because she, for me, is associated with the sign of Libra, and the King of Air is associated with the sign of Aquarius, right? So Aquarians, I have my moon in Aquarius, so I can attest to this. Aquarians tend to be future-oriented people, people who think about humanity as a whole, but also very aloof, very reserved, right? And then the Queen of Air being Libra, this is all about balance, looking at things rationally, logically, but also making decisions that are in the best and highest good for everyone involved, right? So there's that. How can we approach this week with that mindset, right? Now, the only other thing I will say is that she can represent the esoteric or spiritual, depending on how you look at that, art of feng shui. I call her the feng shui queen, right? So it could be that somebody is actually moving into the study and practice of feng shui, literally. Or it could be more metaphorically. For me, the way I would describe feng shui is that it's about placement of items in your space, in your personal space, that will allow better energy flow, right? So it could just be a matter of what can we do to create better energy flow for ourselves in our own personal spaces, right? So this could be in your headspace first and foremost, right? Or it could be, you reflecting on things that create better flow in your external environment. But those are my thoughts, pun intended because of the suit of air, on the Queen of Air in the position of guidance or advice. And so now the last card would be the most likely outcome. And the way I describe that is, for me, philosophy of the reader is that the future is not written in stone. And so based on what this card could be, you could, in the moment that you see the card or hear what the card's about, make a decision, whether it's conscious or unconscious, to say, you know what, I'm not down with that outcome. I want to circumvent that. And so then you are already starting to put yourself on a different path towards a different outcome because you are rejecting Five of Earth, that particular outcome. Now, it could be something that if you feel like you're down with it and you're in agreement with it, you may consciously or unconsciously work towards creating that outcome, right? Because you are in agreement with it, and then your actions would be in alignment with that idea of agreement and moving towards that outcome, right? So now with that in mind, that said, let's take a look at this card. And here we have the Knight of Earth. So interesting. So we had a combination of air being the ruling majority and then Earth being the secondary majority, right? So now the Knight of Air. We also have a lot of court cards this week, so that's interesting to note as well. So when I get a number of court cards in a reading, it represents, again, externally, a lot of people are going to be factoring into unfolding issues or events this week, yes? Now, the Knight of Earth as a person in the outcome position could represent that this situation or a situation that's unfolding is going to rest in the hands, metaphorically, of another person. Now, this could be literal because, again, it represents a suit of earth, and the suit of earth is all about the physical and material. So this could actually be somebody who may be playing an active role or part in how things unfold or how things are resolved. Now, two things I want to bring to mind first. With the King of Air, I talked about the idea about working with angels, and this card, if you look, the Knight has angel wings. So this, one of the meanings of this card is working closely with your guardian angels. I love it, right? Coming on the heels of the King of Air, or mirroring the King of Air, right? As the very first card. So this could be for people who are working with angels. You may get significant validation or confirmation through your communications with your angel this week, or your angels, depending on the belief system. Some people believe that we have one guardian angel. Some people believe we have more than one, right? But this could be about working with your guardian angels. Now, another thing with the Knight of Earth is that he can represent work and labor. I call this the laborer card because he works in the physical environment, the earth, right? Earth element. So this could be somebody who is a physical laborer, that kind of thing. This card is also about methods and observation, right? Because as a knight from the suit of earth, he represents being methodical in terms of approaching something. And this would be in alignment with the suit of air being about systems and processes, yeah? I'm seeing an image from another deck that I have called the Tarot of the Lotus Circle. It's an old deck. And in that image of the Knight of Pentacles, right, this would be the suit of Pentacles if you're following RWS tradition. In that image, he is looking at a computer screen. And so for me, that is a nod to something that is being monitored, right? And I'm going to go back to the issue that I talked about regarding the person in incarceration, right? And that situation that's unfolding, right? This would be monitoring that, keeping an eye on that. So if we go back to the King of Air and mirroring these cards, and then to be the judge in that particular case, monitoring that situation, right? So there is that. But it could also be too, like, how can we be more methodical in terms of our approach to things, right? Because remember now, court cards can be about how we approach situations, right? So now this card can be about being responsible, dependable, reliable, that kind of thing. So it could just be a matter of taking a look at our level of responsibility regarding situations, our level of dependability regarding situations, right? Our level of reliability regarding situations. Right? Ultimately, like, could be also too, like, who ultimately is responsible for things that unfold this week. But I'm of the belief that if we are involved in a situation of any kind, we have some level of responsibility, right? So it could just be asking us to take a look at that. Now, this card is also about money changing hands, and since it's at the last position, if I go back to what I said about the Two of Clubs earlier in this video, then this would be about maybe being on the receiving end of money, because this card can be about money changing hands, financial responsibilities. So there is that as well. And then the last thing I will say about this, going with the more practical aspect of the suit of earth, this could be about coverage, right? The knight is covered in armor. So for me, this could be about coverage. So this could be coverage for your home, your vehicle, your physical body, because I'm just looking at all different types of insurance, right? So this could just be a nod to do the responsible thing and having coverage for a certain material aspect of life, right? And I'm hearing in my head, like, I've got it covered, right? So it could just be a situation in which you show up and you say, I've got this covered, right? Now, the last thing I will say, I thought I was done. The last thing I will say is that whatever the situation is that's unfolding for us, this card represents gradual progress. This is like in the story of the tortoise and the hare. This would be the tortoise, right? So it could be something that's moving slowly, but it's making gradual progress. So you have to remember the old adage that slow and steady wins the race. And on that note, I'm going to wrap up this week's Oracle Outlook video reading here. If you made it to this point in the video with me, I want to thank you for giving me the gift of your time and attention. As I always say, I know in this day and age, there are lots of things vying for your time and attention, and just the fact that you are willing to give me some of yours, I don't take that lightly. So James Himm Mitchell signing off for this week. Thank you again for joining me in this space, and I look forward to seeing you here again in this space, metaphorically. I can't literally see you, but metaphorically seeing you in this space with me for another Oracle Outlook video reading. So until then, I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you soon. Take care.